Hey, everybody. My name is Kevin Bille, and welcome to Good Stuff. I'm glad that you could spend some time with us today. I'm pleased to announce today's guest, Mike Gallina. Mike is the Director of Outreach and Organizational Development at AultCare. Good morning to you, Mike. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. Honored to be with you this morning. You're looking good through Zoom today.
Likewise. I am very lucky and fortunate to call Mike a friend, and I think you'll understand and appreciate after spending some time with him today why I feel that way. Mike, for those of the listeners out there, and I think we'll have some coaches, some business leaders, just a kind of plethora of people right now. Tell us just a little bit about yourself before we jump in, with some of the background and letting them know what you exactly do in your role now, please.
Awesome, Kevin. Thanks. And right up front, I want to share it's a joy and an honor to join you as a friend, but certainly in our effort to lift others up. These moments that we get to spend, short or long, stir things up in folks. So I'm glad to be along to be that stirrer, if you will, today. And a little background about me before we jump all the way in. When you heard Kevin share a little bit about my title, you would say AultCare and VP of Organizational Development and Community. You'd think, well, he must be a corporate guy. Nope, I'm a 30-year school guy. So right away, I like to bring everybody back and say I was a teacher and a coach, born and raised in Minerva, went to the University of Mount Union, 4-year baseball letterman there, and then began my teaching career in Alliance, taught and coached there, as well as Minerva, football and basketball, and then embarked upon an administrative career, 5 years as a principal in the Minerva Local Schools, and then my final 19 years of my 30 in education were as a school district superintendent, 11 of those in Minerva, and then I finished my career at North Canton City Schools as the superintendent. So a 30-year school guy, 24 years as an administrator, the final 19 as a superintendent. I'm just completing, though, my 8th year with AultCare. So it's almost embarking upon a second career. And so I've got that mix of school guy, coach leadership, husband, father leadership, and then the chance in corporate America. So I always say quickly, I've been blessed to just simply say, using our skills and talents wherever they are to lift others up. And my journey shares that it can be non-traditional in many ways.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I see you got your purple today representing the Raiders, right?
For sure. Now, interesting what the Zoom does for me, too. This is actually gray and black.
Oh,
So I have
well,
no clue, Kevin.
maybe I'm colorblind.
No, it's the Zoom. Everything looks purple.
And on all these leadership, positions that you've held, I would, you deal with a lot of different personalities, right? I mean, to me, that's one of the challenges is whether you're coaching a team and you have 12, or maybe you're the head of a small business and you have 50. I think that is something that is always a challenge to us as leaders. Do you have any, best practices or advice you can give people, that are in a similar position when you're dealing with just a ton of different people and how they operate?
Ken, that's a beautiful question because loaded in that is leadership somehow asserts a positional authority. And very quickly, what I like to do is erase positional authority and move into relationship development.
Love it.
So the history, or our titles, if you will, those titles last about 90 seconds in any setting. Then right away, it's can we listen well? Can we figure out that heart, that soul that that person's bringing to that setting, whether it's a ball player, our child, our spouse, or certainly in a meeting room? How quickly can we listen, get them, understand where they are, and then move forward with how do we walk together in it, rather than me consuming from them and then taking off. So I share that right away to say, with all those personalities, quickly can you get in the setting and understand those that you're with? Knowing yourself to lead yourself, and then knowing that environment is so powerful. So you get rid of positional authority and you jump right into what do we know about one another that can take this thing forward.
Wow, that's awesome. And I think that kind of goes back to what I have seen or read, and then kind of here it's the we over me mentality, and I think that's extremely important. And probably the older I get, the more I just continually respect those relationships. I think in that probably I think of the word culture, and it's such a buzzword in today's society. I think I guess I'd be interested, and I'm sure the listeners would. How do how do you develop culture in the places that you've been? Where you've been, currently where you're at.
Culture is a great buzzword, Kevin. I love that you go there because somewhere in leadership, the word "what's your culture" slides into a question.
Hmm.
Here's my quick definition of culture: words, actions, and behaviors done over and over again, woven into the daily routine. So listen to those three words, actions, behaviors, or just shorten it down, WAB. If you wanted to do that as a radio station or a TV station, WAB. Two of those three are not coming out of your mouth. So the actions and behaviors are really culture. So when folks say to me, Mike, how can you tell me about my culture? I say, let me spend 5 days with you, just being with you in your gym, in your routines at work, in your effort at a camp. I'm just going to watch the words, actions, and behaviors done over and over and over again. Therein lies your culture. So very quickly, I say you watch things rather than try to impose culture.
Hmm.
You watch and then behave a certain way and then talk people through how that worked for you. Did it lift others up? Did it lift the situation up? As you do that, your culture starts to clarify. So as we think about our family culture, how do we interact with one another? Do we have schedules? Do we treat one another with quality tone in our voice? Are we stern but still fair? Those are things in a family. Well, you can translate that into a locker room, certainly into a meeting room, and then on teams that you lead. So what's your WAB over and over and over again really sets the culture, and then you manage inside of that. So I have a bias around culture, as you can tell, Kevin. It can be a buzzword, but for me, it's what's the human interaction done spiritually correctly. And I think you get the best out of folks, so your WAB is better.
Yeah, it makes
Had
me
I
think.
come to, oh, I'm sorry, go
No,
ahead.
you're fine. Go ahead.
I was going to say, had I come, we got a great college basketball coach in front of us today. And someone would say, Mike, would you come talk to my team? Usually what I would do with the team, but I'd say, guys, ladies, when you put those headphones on and you're out there in pregame, everybody's between the legs, behind the back, shooting and bouncing around, they got that rhythm. That playlist is important to them.
Hmm.
So I share with folks to say, what's your personal playlist? Would somebody want to be listening to who you are, what you are underneath those headphones? Folks don't care about what's on your playlist until WAB is song number one. It's a funny analogy, but if you can make WAB, words, actions, and behaviors, solid as playlist number one, they'll listen to the rest of your songs. It's a metaphor for they'll let the rest of you in. So I use that visual because it's good for kids, good for people, but playlist song one has to be words, actions, and behaviors. The rest will be let in, and they'll lock you in and let you go with them.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Interesting metaphor.
Yeah, but two things I thought of right away, Mike. It's this, and I know these numbers are a little off depending on when you look now, but it's like that 60-30-10 rule when you're talking or speaking. I think 60% of it is people are getting that body language, and 30% of it's that tone, and 10% of it's what you're actually saying. So I think that kind of goes to what you're saying. And you also said something else that I picked up on. I think as I get older too, I have so much more respect for habits. And you mentioned daily routine. I guess the habits that we instill in our lives every day, to me, are more important than the goals, if you will. What are some of the, I just think that's a quality attribute, I guess. So what would you say are some of the habits that you've built into your daily routine to impact or affect all that you just talked about?
I love where you went there, Ken, with the idea of habits, because translation of habits is it regulates us to be our best. Habits create a regulation that our best comes forward. So, I don't apologize for starting right out with my day as I make sure I do a daily reflection, do my biblical reading in a short way, make sure I reflect upon and say, what's that little message that's being sent? And then just slowing me down enough to say, be my best today through that little nudge, whatever that was. So I start my day with that. And then as I get into work, I always make sure that as I manage that day, that it's about communicating with others something positive. I do a birthday card for everybody in the organization. So there's 550 of them. So I make sure I'm writing and dropping those in each day because that's about somebody else. Making sure that I communicate out so that someone else is not waiting for me. So I share simply the start my day. Those habits are about making sure I'm lifting somebody else up right out of the gate. Then getting into the schedule to make sure that am I where I need to be to help at the best, even if it means me changing my schedule. So I get in the habit of can I serve first and then make sure I slide my time in there to get my work done as well. So that's just a quick feel of how I get out of the gate. And then just habits around that way of staying in good communication. But then when you're working with people in those dynamic one-on-ones or in a meeting, making sure that they are the most important thing you're doing in that minute. And they'll know it. They'll know it from your vibe. So the habit of making it about others and lifting it up however I can is the way I try to go at the work, knowing it's not going to be perfect.
Yeah, but I can definitely speak to that just in our times together. I know the one thing that I appreciate and respect out of you is when I'm with you, you're present,
Mm,
and I matter to you. And so that's important. And you mentioned positivity. I don't even know if I've ever asked you this in the times that, I guess in the last 5, 6 years of our breakfasts or whatnot, how in the world, because we do a roundtable here, which I've told you about, just a non-negotiable every Monday morning. I just think it's the greatest exercise for teams. And there's a section that mentions, if you know somebody that of that value, who is it and why? And you were one of my people here a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of it's the positivity that you hit on. How in the world you're the most positive guy I've ever met. How in the world do you maintain that positivity throughout your day? And just throughout things that are going on or challenges or failures. I think that's where it kind of hits people. How do you stay true to that?
First of all, thank you for the kind words. And I very quickly come back and say, I'm simply a mirror reflecting everybody's best back to them. So I teasingly say, that energy's yours. I'm just sending it back. It's you all along. So I start with making sure I position myself so that I can give you back what you're giving in that setting. But I also say I'm blessed. That was a gift I've been given, is to say, okay, maybe you're not the biggest guy, or in a competitive sense, you don't hit a profile, but you can sure bring something that lifts the whole thing up. For me, it's energy. And I quickly say I've been blessed to have that capacity. So right away I go there, that it's a blessing to do that. But I also can flip every time I'm listening to something, I'm trying to find a way, there's an opportunity in it. There's some little nugget that we take. So that positivity is probably just me sharing back what you and I are vibing in that conversation of what's the opportunity in this. Yeah, that's tough. Boy, that's ugly, or oh, that's just heavy. But boy, if there's one thing we can take from it, let's go make that work for us. Well, that turns the whole self-talk narrative
Hmm.
that brings you back up. Even on a heavy day, you can anchor to that stuff. So I use that phrase to say, what can we anchor to? What can we lift up? And then just double down on that each day. So I appreciate those earlier kind words, Kevin, but most importantly, you guys' energy, I'm just giving back through opportunity.
Well, there's energy givers and energy takers. You're definitely an energy giver, right?
Thank you.
What about you personally? Like, what inspires you? What motivates you? Are there certain things? And I guess a second part of that would be, what do you do? I think one of the main things that I really want to come across through this is just, I'm always trying to learn. I'm always trying to get better. I'm always trying to grow. So there's that motivation, there's that inspiration, but then also, what do you do for growth in your own life?
Mm. Well, there's a funny phrase that you want to make sure you surround yourself with good people. And there's a funny analogy for it. A dead battery can't jump a dead battery.
Hmm.
So
That's good.
it's a hilarious way of saying you got to be around energetic people. So what I make sure that I do is that I'm going to make sure I'm with people or being helpful to people throughout the day. But I'm also going to talk to people that have good energy, similar relationship, like you and I when we spend our time together. We know from a core where it's coming from, so we can trust that. But I very quickly will share I take care of myself physically. You make sure that you have that spiritual sense that we heard earlier, and you put those things together. That helps you stay motivated. And for me, I think I was always, used as a little guy in my three sports. I wasn't ever the biggest, but I could contribute and manage. So I always thought I was being a message. So what used to motivate me was just use skills and talents. Those are neutral. Keep putting those in the game and don't see yourself without. So I think what motivates me, Kevin, and probably what motivates most people is, what do you create in that narrative in your mind's eye to say, what can I give to this?
Mhm.
Well, if I think I can give something, I'm going to stay at it. And so I stay away from those things that might be negative self-talk. So I think that keeps me in the game. There's that spiritual sense, taking care of yourself, but then
Right.
always looking for the lift in it to keep myself there. And a dead battery doesn't jump. A dead battery is a good one because it makes you smile to say, be around energetic people or find a place to bring your energy back up.
Yeah, for sure. And then growth wise too, are you a guy that do you dive into books? Do you dive into podcasts, YouTube videos? Is there a certain thing that you find rewarding to your own personal growth?
Yeah, I love that because that sharpening the saw, if you're a Stephen Covey reader, that's like
Yeah.
that number 7 on the 7 habits. That's that good spot. So for me, it's usually around inspirational reading. So I don't necessarily go to how to. So for example, Lead for God's Sake, that was a good one. Onward's book, and then Be the Message, things with culture. So I'll use Matthew Kelly as an example. Just those are folks that you connect to say they have inspired purpose. So maybe that's where I'm trying to go with that. Always read something that causes your purpose to get a little bit of a nudge and just keep energizing that. So probably more of a reader, but the podcast thing, I'm coming around. You can
Yeah.
guide me a little bit toward that. Zoom has been helpful, and then getting into YouTube. If I want to look at a certain theme or someone guides me, I'll look for a YouTube snippet. That's where you pick up on Simon Sinek, who's been a
Yeah.
wonderful, wonderful YouTube piece that way. So examples of reading, probably some YouTube, coming up on the podcast thing. That's my growth potential.
No, there you go. There you go. One thing I guess I'm big on is just impact, and hopefully that's a positive impact instead of a negative impact. And I know that you impact a ton of people, but along your journey, if you will, has there been somebody that's impacted you or impacts you now?
Mm. Isn't it so true? As we come through our life's journey, we're in those moments and we don't think about that impact till we get past them and look back. Then we think, oh, a coach or a family member. So for me, my parents, were just awesome. I'm the oldest of 6, so I watched them manage a big household. My mom passed away when I was a senior in high school. I was 18. My youngest sister was 6. So I watched my dad manage a very challenging situation. He was just probably 30, he'd have been about 41 years old at the time. My mom passed away. So you put all that together, they were inspiring. Then I had coaches. I think about Lynn Mullen, who was my 6th grade teacher, who ended up being a defensive back coach on his staff.
Mm.
So he was my teacher, coach, and then I worked with him. Ray Davis, similar. I was a varsity assistant boys basketball coach at Minerva with Ray. He was my JV boys basketball coach at Minerva. And those are a couple that I think of quickly. Larry Hackenberg, my
Yeah.
high school coach. So I'm just, you could go, everybody has a list. But to your point, I think for me, it was family, teachers, and coaches along the way that had the quickest impact on me. And then certainly you work your way out and have others that do that along the way too.
Right. Yeah, I could resonate with that. You mentioned 18-year-old Mike. So if you could go back to 18-year-old Mike or maybe even 25-year-old Mike, what would you tell him now?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I was such a perfectionist and I was so driven because no one was going to outwork me. Every minute was consumed on drilling, training, consuming. And I was just a ball player doing that over and over and over again. I think looking back now, I would say, hey, you don't have to sweat all that stuff. You can let some of that go. It's going to be okay.
Mhm.
And maybe experience some other things because it's okay to let those in. I wasn't letting in any distractions. Oh, was I driven? Now looking back, I'd say that'd have been okay. Give yourself a little wider avenue.
So would you say that is I guess, an important lesson that you learned in life, and if not, I guess what would be maybe the most important lesson you have learned? And what was life like before that? And then what was life like after that in regards to that lesson?
Mm. A good call because you're kind of pulling up on that theme of what's the lesson. The lesson is sometimes we can get so focused that sometimes we got to get our head up and see the rest of the things that are going on. So perhaps I might not have let myself have as much fun or let something be fun. It was more work for me. I was always enjoying it, but it was going to be back to the task. So probably the lesson along the way would be making sure that we pace our life so that if we have a strong skill set or we're driven a certain way, that's cool. But let that have a space then to let something else in. So I guess I would call creating a boundary for the things that we're really good at and we're passionate about, and leaving ourselves open to there are other things, and be okay letting some of those in and appreciate them.
Yeah, boy, what a powerful word, and pace. Somebody gave me that word a couple months ago, when we had breakfast, and just kind of, I've been in this position almost 6 months, and you're just so gung ho on certain things, and I know you're aligned with this. It's like, man, if I'm not doing it now, somebody else is doing it and passing me by, or you just got to be the best and the best and the best, and it's never enough. So pace is a great word there that you just gave us.
But for sure. And the other thing for me, kind of using that word pace, I love it. And the other part is, I think, personal expectation. I was probably a perfectionist to the nth degree, maybe right down to getting handwriting right when I was in third
Yeah,
grade. You can laugh about that. It just had
yeah.
to be right. And I think that was just always so much energy. And I would probably, looking back, saying, get it to a good spot and be okay with that. What's a funny phrase? We are enough. We are enough. We don't
Yeah.
have to chase that.
Well, I want to kind of wrap things up here, and just to keep with my personal experience. These are kind of a rapid fire 3 pointers. End of the game here. We need to hoist up a couple threes. You told me to be the PG, and you're the shooting guard here. So
Shot ready.
I'm gonna pass you the ball. Unlike I didn't do much in the past, but so let's go. Question number one with that. If people could learn, one thing from this talk, what would you want them to take away?
I'll use this statement. Let your hopes and your dreams, so those things that are personally yours, collide with a vision and purpose. So I use that word collide in the middle. That's a collision energy. So you can think about things, hopes and dreams, things that you reflect on, but they have to collide with a vision for it and then a purpose, that soulful spot. So my takeaway would be that statement. Whatever your hopes and dreams are, because those are going on all the time, they got to collide hard with vision and purpose. Not just to bump into. The funny phrase is, I got to have conviction in that shot you just opened me up for. I got to be shot ready and take advantage of it. So I'll use that word collide in the middle. Hopes and dreams collide, vision and purpose. So that'd be a big thing for I want folks to take away.
Love it. Number two, and don't avoid this question now.
All right.
If you could step into my shoes, what's one thing you would have asked yourself that I didn't ask you today?
All right. I love it. So I would say, as here's a question I might ask, as you do job change, and you and I both have gone through that. So I would ask folks, are you prepared to pivot in life?
Wow,
And
powerful.
if
That's
and if
powerful.
so, how? What skills do you bring that allow you to pivot? So I know the basketball analogy, so that's I had to go there.
Yeah, right. No, that's a
But
great
we have
question.
both of you and I have had that unique experience. Hey, I got my second drink.
Yeah, I love it. Uh,
So are you able to pivot and take on life's next thing? Can you pivot?
yeah, that's really good. And then third question would be, good stuff. That's just something I've always said, and that's just the name of this. So, in closing, could you give us some good stuff, whatever you think is appropriate for maybe the conversation, for the time we're in, whatever it might be? What's some good stuff?
Uh, First of all, cool idea for the name of this, Kevin. So I want to come back before I land and say thank you for the opportunity to be with you. Love what you're doing, and I'm lifting up what you're doing in your career too. So hear that applause.
Thanks, my man.
I'd probably wrap up with this. There's a cool phrase I like to use in certain talks. It's called excellence can be achieved if we care more than others think is wise, risk more than others think is safe, dream more than others think is practical, and expect more than others think is possible. So
Yeah.
care, risk, dream, expect. If you could put that into the game, it's amazing what we can do. It helps us pivot.
Yeah, I love it. That is good stuff. Hey, where can our listeners connect with you? I know that if you want to tell them maybe a little bit about Mondays with Mike or anything else that you have, so they can be on the lookout for that, please.
Well, here's a cool way, Kevin. Because you're on my Mondays with Mike list, you could, if you have a list of listeners, you could push that out through email. If someone had interest in just getting a little more connection to that 2-minute leadership drill every Monday morning, they could do Gallina at altcare.com. All lowercase, mgallina@altcare.com, and I can put them on the list, and I can be sending Mondays with Mike every Monday, and they can stay connected that way.
Yeah, Mondays with Mike is awesome. It's a really good tool, like you said, 2 minutes and just a lot in there in those 2 minutes. And I know there's been a lot in here in the 20-ish minutes or so that we've spent, Mike. So I thank you a ton for being on here. I think you're a great leader in person, obviously, and once again, just blessed to call you a friend and looking forward to our personal journey moving forward. And I'm sure that there's been a lot of valuable information for people out here today. So thank you so much for spending some time with us, Mike.
Thank you very much, Kevin. It's a joy.
Yeah, and I think in closing, I would just tell everybody once again, it's one thing to listen to the message. It's another to take it to action and apply it somehow, somewhere in your life. So that's all we have for today. Until next time, good stuff. Thank you.